So obviously the ADB has been a massive supporter in Bangladesh for many years, a long-standing history of economic development and support. I would like to ask you to share a little bit more about some of the key initiatives in Bangladesh that the ADB is currently doing, especially with regards to financial inclusion in the RMG sector.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me here tonight. This is really a great occasion. I'm a big admirer. I just knew this originally today, actually, but I read very quickly, and this is really one of the initiatives that is really great. I think on Bangladesh, I think before I came here, I actually wrote a book with our research department called Beyond Garment. I think, of course, this country has been doing a lot on garment, but I think down the line, I think you need to diversify. But I think today we talk about garment industry. I think I also met many of the important players in this industry, but one thing that I really admire is their resilience. I think also in that context, YCD also support that resilience. Why is it resilient? In general, garment, in my view, is a game of productivity, right? I think, and that productivity is the one that make garment industry years growing and competitive. And most of those productivity come from female. And ADB, as you know, is a big supporter of gender equality in the country. And in that context, we have been working a lot on supporting female in terms of access to finance, supporting female in terms of education also, yeah. Supporting female in terms of other aspect of workforce. I think in the garment industry, especially now, I think we have a social security program with the government, and under that program, we actually supported insurance for kind of a work-related injury. Bangladesh in general are starting with insurance, contributing by the workers and so on, but we are there. But just to close my first point, I think Tobias was mentioning that Bangladesh is just like Indonesia 10 years ago. I fully agree. Indonesia is now what we call upper middle income country. By 2031, Bangladesh is also wanting to be a middle income country, upper middle income country. You know what is the most important thing that bring the country up to upper middle income country? It is the people. It is productivity. So in that context, this initiative overall is very timely. Thank you.
Thank you, Edimon. And maybe following up, I know that the Asia Foundation is also working a lot in terms of RMG worker well-being and is involved in some of the key initiatives. Could you maybe share some of those initiatives and some of the learnings that you've seen from them?
Thanks for inviting me here. It's my pleasure being here. So at the Asia Foundation, currently we have one big program that is funded by the Edimon Foundation. It's called the Collective Impact for Future Work in Bangladesh. So when any kind of RMG sector focused program is developed, they usually focus only on women. But in our program, we try to bring, even though there's a huge focus in women, but also bring in the male counterparts. So there are three bigger umbrellas that we work in. The first one being the collective wellness of the workers. So we focus on their communities. So a few of our interventions can be, a few examples of our interventions would be community daycares. We do couples counseling for programs involving the husbands of the workers, not just the workers. We also work with improving their wash situation, so access to clean water, health issues, access to health services. So that's one part of the aspect that we work in. The other aspect, other bigger umbrella, is the skills development. So there's soft skills and then there's hard skill. So in terms of hard skill, we try to focus on the future of work. What does it demand? What the demand would be from the workers in next 5 years, in next 10 years. We all know that future of work means automation. So we are trying to encourage the female workers to be comfortable working in managing technology, automated machineries, because usually male are predominant in those areas. So we're trying to encourage the women also. And in terms of soft skill programs, we try to encourage women into go to the leadership roles within the factories. So not just be focusing on the line manager, but maybe go into the floor manager roles or the leadership roles that there's there. And we all know that usually male, that's also another male-dominated sector in there. So we try to encourage the females also. But when we are providing leadership courses or leadership training programs, we don't discriminate. The male are as much as welcomed as the females, but there's a little bit more push for the women. and these two are, and there's beyond these, we also work into alternative skills. So we all know that there's a time limitation or a preferred age for the workers in this sector. So after the workers are at a certain age and they tend to leave the industry. So what we are trying to encourage is not to leave the industry, but maybe go into some other relevant sectors. For example, maybe packaging or maybe textile, if not RMG. So this is something we try to develop their skills in those sectors also.
Fantastic. Certainly some amazing work that the Asia Foundation is doing in Bangladesh. How have you seen the journey of worker well-being changing over time, and what are some of the learnings that and experiences that you've seen happening on the ground?
Thank you, Tobias. Good evening, everybody. I think the entire journey of the garment sector has been it's like a roller coaster ride. I think in Bangladesh it's been up and down and up and down. When my father first started the garment factory in Chittagong, it was a single-story industrial, full air-conditioned, with the options of even joining trade union within the factory and all of that. And then I think as the numbers multiplied and the industry grew so fast, that's, I think, when people started cutting corners, which is, I think, normally what happens in any trade, you know. You get bigger and sometimes you lose focus. But then, of course, there are companies like, for example, SQ Group, and then there are so many other garments factories today that are so conscientious. We have the highest number of LEED factories in Bangladesh. We have the highest number of green factories in the world. 8 out of 10 of the LEED factories in the world, the best factories are in Bangladesh. So we have all these numbers that are going for us. And of course, you know, Rana Plaza has been a remarkable incident. It's a tragedy, yes, of course. But, you know, in a country that is only 50 years old and an industry that is also just about 45 years old, and with 180 million people, anything can happen, and anything can happen not only in Bangladesh, but, you know, you had the Manhattan waist shirt company, that same thing in Manhattan 100 years ago. There was a fire and there were dead bodies lined up on Fifth Avenue, and there were children workers, and I think there was no law to protect them. So that was the turning point of labor law in the US. So just like that, Rana Plaza is a tragedy, but what we did as Bangladeshi garment factory owners from that point of time is that we only improved. And today I think, it's hard to be the number one exporter because China is so big. But from a country as small as Bangladesh, for us to be the second largest producer of garments in the world, I think is an amazing thing. So, and then of course, after the maturity of the whole industry came about so many of these social factors that now the Asian Foundation is doing, you're offering. The brands also offer so many CSR projects. People they have schools, they have subsidized grocery shopping, and it's limitless how much people do. A lot of it is often projected and known and written about, and sometimes no, the owner is just doing it for the workers and getting some self-gratification out of it. So I am very, very proud, of course, of the garment industry, not only because it has a personal connection to my family, my father, but as a country, I think we've done remarkably well. I think we shall continue to grow, and post-pandemic, I think we are possibly in the best state that we've ever been in as far as the garment industry is concerned. So onwards and upwards, hopefully. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vidiya. And I think you're highlighting something that also really struck me by surprise, which is also something that Edimon earlier mentioned, is the resilience and the speed to innovate. I think if you compare Bangladeshi factories and the RMG sector, it is amazing how fast the industry is changing and how quickly people are identifying problems, iterating, finding solutions. And I think especially SQ Group has obviously been always at the forefront of some of the key initiatives, especially around workers. So maybe Mr. Abid, you could share a little bit more about what you've been seeing happening in terms of financial stress in the workforce, which is not, frankly speaking, a problem of owners, but I think it's a more structural challenge in the supply chain by more and more cheaper production, etc. So maybe you can share a little bit more about what has been your experience in the RMG industry, especially with regards to financial stress, and what's been the experience working with Wagely, and also maybe from a worker's perspective.
Thank you. A very good evening, and thank you very much for having me today. Okay. Well, the point you have raised, the financial stress, I think over the last 2 years, we have experienced something totally unprecedented. And during this time, many companies, they have started realizing that we should have a very sharp and very structured focus in employee well-being. And when you think about the employee well-being, I think financial well-being is in the center of that. And we, again, I can tell you that over the last 2 years, we have witnessed so many things. Many new terms are coming up. Like, we know that this is a time for something is calling the Great Resignation. People start calling it a big quit. Many things are happening. This pandemic has created a stress, and if we are serious about managing this well-being, that should be the top priority for all of us. So at SQ, what we are doing, we are trying to look at well-being from a holistic perspective, because we know that many researches, many studies are being conducted after that. So probably the last one I came across done by the Stanford University. They're telling there should be a structured, holistic approach in the well-being, and maybe they're telling there are 6 dimensions of there. 3 of the dimensions are evolving around the operators, from organizational perspective. And 3 other dimensions are from the people perspective. The first one, the company should have a kind of a define the purpose in this situation. What should be the purpose? And then coming up with a true commitment supported with leadership accountability. And then setting up essential infrastructure in place. And from the people perspective, it's mental well-being, and then financial well-being, and the interpersonal. So then we were looking for multiple ways how we can help our people to cope up with these situations. And then we came across with the OHD. And this is perfectly aligned behind our objective also. Because now we understand in this situation, we'll have to take a different approach, which basically started right before the pandemic. Before the pandemic, we all were talking about what's going to happen. We are at the nascent days of the 4th Industrial Revolution. Everything is getting automated, digitized, connected, the big data, many things. So then we should have a kind of a integrated network in the well-being where we can bring many of these essential service providers and create access for our people there. So, and probably Wesley is one of the areas that. So this is critically important for us, this financial well-being, and it has to be looked after.
Thank you, Mr. Abid. And so maybe you can share, in addition to this, a little bit more about what's been the feedback from you as an employer. What are the benefits that you're seeing? And in addition, how are your workers benefiting from it?
Okay. We have been using Wesley over the last 6-7 months. So we have some solid data by this time. First, we thought it's a new initiative, but we understood the importance of that, but how it will be accepted by our people and how they can be beneficial of that, we wanted to give it a try. So now after the 7 months, what we can see a tremendous interest in our people and the participation. Just I want to share one data. In the month of March, we had 7,000 individual transactions of earned wages. It means from the 17 million taka PDT. And you understand that in a situation like that, 7,000 transactions in a month, and more than 90% of that done on emergency grounds. For the medical purpose, to meet any emergency fund requirement. And it says, it gives a example that how stressful the people are going through right now. Even the OHD, they're embracing it something to maybe to support their emergency needs. So from our perspective, our people are gradually getting into it. Out of those 7,000 individual transactions, there are 6,000 people made those transactions, and it's increasing every month. So from this data point, I can say that people are taking it very positively, and definitely it is helping them.
Thank you, Mr. Abid. And maybe Vidiya, you've been joining us. I think it's now the 3rd month that your company has been using Wagely. Maybe you could share some of your experiences and maybe some of the stories that you've been hearing from your factory workers.
3 months. Peter, hello. Back on.
3 months already.
Yeah, 3 months already.
Oh, wow.
It's been a time, yeah.
Well, of course, I remember when I first spoke to you, and I think it was SQ's reference when you said that SQ is on board. I said, okay, then if they're doing it, I'll do it. So then, obviously, they're trendsetters in this respect. The response has been great, to be honest. Initially, there was confusion about, the one confusion which I shared with you was what I realized right before Ramadan when I asked my HR that, what's the percentage of people who are using it? And they're saying, oh, madam, they're getting used to it and they're a bit confused. So I said, where does the confusion come from? And honestly, I think the confusion came from the fact that, all these workers are not necessarily very well educated. So sometimes they think that, if they take the wage leave money, then does that mean that something might get disrupted from their actual salary? So it's the calculation that they were worried about, not the concept. They were not necessarily fearful of taking and not being able to spend the money later on, but that was just one confusion, that if we take it now, does that mean that we're going to get less later? I said no, it's very simple. Everything is of course going through a software, fingerprint, and then your own software, and then it combines. And then if you have any problem, please go and talk to the HR people who are very much available in the factory. So this I actually personally, because somehow my people weren't being able to communicate, or they weren't being able to trust my HR, or something was missing. But I individually, right before the month of Ramadan, I went to them and I said this to them, group by group by group, that look, this is what it is. And I think I spoke to you 2 days later and I said, did it make a difference? And you said, yes, massively. So that's that. But people have come, and like he said, that in case of emergencies, operation, medical needs, the number one factor actually has been emergency medical services for their families, where they didn't know where to get money from. So it's a positive impact. And very importantly, especially at a time when, although in a country of 180 million people, we have a shortage of about 26% of skilled workers, every factory is fighting to get the workers. And, how much can you play with money? Today I can say, okay, I'll give you extra taka more, 100 takas more, and then he'll come to me. But 3 months later, they'll take that pay slip and go to another factory and do the same, and then they'll come back. So that doesn't help us, because it's a calculation. The brand is not paying us more just like that. So, and we work with very tight calculations in the garment industry, with all other living costs going up. So this comes as a blessing, I think, at a time when this is just some cushioning. And it's welcome cushioning, it's positive cushioning. Workers like it, it's simple, and I think the more they use it, like he said, 6-7 months later, I think they'll be in a better place to use it even more. So great, I think it's a great initiative.
Thank you. Thank you, Vidiya. And I think you're speaking about something that's very important, which I think also at the development level and NGO level is really changing. I think initially when people have talked about economic development, especially with regards to financial services, we've talked a lot about digital financial services, we've talked a lot about financial inclusion, but I think a very important piece has always been missing, which is that just opening a bank account doesn't necessarily make the person more financially inclusive. I think you mentioning something that's very important, which is financial education. Financial literacy that needs to be improved along the way. So it's great to give people access to their salary, but if you don't educate them along the way on how to use that access responsibly, I think that also creates problem. And to a certain degree, it's definitely something that we're still getting better. The ADB has obviously worked a lot on financial literacy programs, financial inclusion programs. So maybe Edimon, you can maybe share a little bit more about your experience in financial education and financial literacy around the countries you have worked in.
Okay, thank you very much. Very good questions. ADBs missions, as you know, for Asia to be free of poverty. So we learned a lot about poverty. So one of the biggest contributors of poverty is certainly one is financial access. I think sometimes even if you have access, if it's bad access, also contributing to poverty. So I think this is really important. Financial literacy is key. So imagine they work on wage basis. I think they are vulnerable still whenever they have some emergency. If they, because of emergency, they go to very high cost borrowing, that is going to be a big problem. I think Abid mentioned about three well-being. Yeah, one is financial well-being. Second is mental well-being. Third is interpersonal well-being. If you don't have, if once you access this high cost lending, I think the three will go right away. If you are financially independent, of course, the mental wellness and financial wellness can be separated. But if you're not yet middle income and up, usually the three are together. So I think understanding that will make you appreciate a lot better of this better access of finance. But once you have access, also it's very important for the workers to be financially literate. I think access alone is not enough, but there's gradually also put some financial literacy there as one of the components that will make this sustainable. And this is what we like the most of it, actually, in my view, because that is where development is coming. Second thing that brings people out of poverty is actually education, right? Of course, education is one of them, actually, financial educations, but another one, of course, I think Vidiya was mentioning about skills. In that context also, Vidiya, I think we work with the associations to do skill development program with the Ministry of Finance here. I think that went very well also. I think this has been something that we've done for 3 programs now, or maybe already like maybe 10 years. So behind the scene, we are actually also developing skill in the sector together with the associations. That's one more that I would like to highlight from ADB side. Thank you.
Thank you, Edimon. And maybe one last question before we're opening up again for some intermingling. I think we have some food prepared and some drinks. I would like to ask one last question to Ainee. You've been working a lot in terms of stakeholder engagement, and I think what we're seeing as well is that it's not only about Wagely as one company speaking individually to a lot of RMG companies or owners, right? But I think it's more really about an ecosystem play. How can we engage with the public sector, with the private sector, with the association? So based on your experience, what would you recommend are some of the best ways in terms of engaging stakeholders, especially with regards to worker well-being?
I would say this is a very good example to this event, because what Wagely is doing is, in terms of financial inclusion, this is something very much talked about. Everyone is up for it, but when you go and speak to a worker, it's a different aspect that you will be selling. You will be encouraging them the financial, not inclusion, I would say, financial management. They will know how to manage their finances better. They will probably have more savings behavior or savings attitude inbuilt in this. But when you go to factories like the esteemed factories that you guys have, this is completely different ballgame. They are more brand focused. So these Wagely or financial inclusion type of initiatives actually brings in another layer of goodwill for your factories. It comes hand in hand with transparency. When a factory is opening up or digitally including their wages, it means that they're opening up their expenses, and that inherently bring in transparency, and that's amazing for the goodwill of the factories. That creates a very good reputation of them in front of the brands. But then again, there's another type of factories, I would say, who are not much brand focused. you might be facing a bit of challenges supporting them in opening up, or digital wage is not something that they will be very much interested. So in that cases, I would say working with the policymakers is something that would be needed. You need to create, or not just wagely, but supports from INGOs or NGOs like us. We would love to be together, work with the policymakers to make sure that this is something is an industry standard, not just examples of the cream of the industries. This is something that needs to become top down. Unfortunately, not much.
Agree.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking based on experience also in Indonesia, which you obviously know very well. So with that, thank you very much, Ainee. Thank you, Mr. Abid. Thank you, Vidiya. Thank you, Edimon, for participating, and thanks for your support. Maybe we'll do one quick picture, and then we'll open up the floor again to individual discussions. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.